What's the biggest problem with alternative energy? Clean energy sources like wind and solar don't have an existing infrastructure for support. They also have a built-in problem. How do you store solar power when the sun isn't shining? And how do you transmit wind energy when the wind isn't blowing? By and large, the storage and transmission technology that would make these energy sources more feasible doesn't exist. But in Montana, one of the windiest places in the nation, Governor Schweitzer is adopting a build it and they will come approach. Wind farms are popping up all over the state, and Schweitzer believes it's only a matter of time before the technology follows. So you've been working in Montana to make Montana a leader in alternative fuels and energy sources. I was sort of curious, what does Montana offer that can make those things a reality?
First, to give you a perspective, right after graduate school, I went to Saudi Arabia and Libya. I worked in the Middle East for about the first 7 years of my career. And so I had an opportunity to see an energy economy. And I also had an opportunity to see a social system that is not conducive to our Western culture. Mm-hmm. And so I know that the most important thing we can do in this country is to become energy independent. And that means all sources of energy. Montana has, according to recent studies, the second best wind energy resources in the country, some of the best on the planet.
According to the American Wind Energy Association, Montana has a wind energy production potential of 116,000 megawatts. Data from the U.S. Department of Energy show Montana went from producing 0 megawatts of electricity from wind energy in 2000 to 270 megawatts this year, with more wind farms under construction that will add another 100 megawatts in production. Montana is part of the so-called wind belt that stretches from northern Texas through Wyoming and central eastern Montana.
But the most important thing is we have to develop storage technology. We actually have an unlimited supply of energy, whether it be tidal or wind or solar, but wind is not blowing all the time, the sun's not shining all the time, and so we as consumers demand electricity when we want it, not when the sun is shining or when the wind is blowing. So that means the most important technology of our time, and for the next 3 decades, will be storage technology, batteries. Just to give you an example, if every car, light truck, and SUV in America had a battery that could get the first 40 miles on a charge before it switched to another source of energy, we could eliminate 2/3 of the oil that we import. Those cars exist today. What we don't have is the resolve to buy those cars and put them on the highways.
Well, wind power, you said, is obviously is booming here in Montana. You said the second best wind. Isn't transmission always brought up as a reason not to do wind? And how do you overcome that objection?
Well, part of the solution to transmission is this storage. We need to build more transmission so that we can get the electricity to those places that are using it. But understand this, that we build transmission for peak demand. For example, in California, at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, they have peak demand. Right. But by Friday night at 2 o'clock in the morning, they're only using half as much electricity. So if we could build a transmission system that had storage on the other end, so that the consumer that had that battery in their car could either be buying electricity in the middle of the night or selling it back into the grid at 10 o'clock in the morning, we would need less transmission. We do need to add to our transmission capacity, and that's why Montana has actually led the way for the entire world in cataloging our wildlife corridors in a digital way, so that when people are deciding where they're going to build their transmission lines, we already know where the antelope need to move, and where the elk need to move, and where the bear need to move, so that we build these transmission lines in such a way that we'll be able to maintain our high quality of wildlife and a transmission system to deliver Montana wind power to California cars.
Let's go in chronological order. Let's say, when did it start?